Evening, everybody. Right. Any member or officer in physical attendance with an electronic device should mute it to avoid feedback. Any remote participant, please keep your camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak. And ideally, do not use the camera facilities at all, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. The meeting may be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swale Borough Council or Kent County Council laptops to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Welcome members, officers and any members of the public to this extraordinary licensing committee meeting, including any visiting members and members of the public. The following staff are intended: Conscientious Lawyer Mid-Kent Helen Ward, Community Service Manager Steph Curtis, Licensing Team Leader Joe Thompson, Democratic Services Philippa Richardson. Are members all aware of the emergency evacuation procedure? There are no planned evacuations alarms. The Democratic Services will direct all attendees safely out of the building and into the car park. The lifts must not be used. I'm like the lifts, they keep breaking down. Is there anybody in attendance who wish have mobility issues? Please indicate now. I think I have at the moment. Are there any apologies for absence, Philippa?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Alex Eyre, from Councillor Chris Palmer, who is substituted by Councillor Richard Palmer, from Councillor Rich Lehman, who is substituted by Councillor Terry Thompson, and from Councillor Tara No. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No. No one has registered to speak. I invite the officer to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At the meeting of the General Licensing Committee on the 4th of October 2022, it was agreed that there should be an automatic annual increase to the taxi tariff based upon the National Rail fares increase, subject to statutory consultation. Following this meeting, an increase was applied. There was no increase in 2023, as the tariff had only been effective in the closing months of the previous year. The current Swale taxi tariff became effective in March 2024 and was increased as agreed in line with the National Rail fares increase. The current tariff can be seen as Appendix 1 on page 9 of your agenda. In March this year, the National Rail fares increased by 4.6%. A new tariff was calculated in line with this increase. The proposed fare equates to a 40 pence increase on a 2-mile journey, a rise from £8.30 to £8.70. This is applied to the taximeter by decreasing the number of yards between each 10p added to the fare for a journey. The proposed tariff was advertised in the local paper, sent out to the taxi trade by way of a newsletter, and displayed at the council offices for the statutory 14 days. The advertisement can be seen as Appendix 2 on page 11 of your agenda. The newsletter was sent out to all Swale licensed taxi drivers and operators. There are currently 319 licensed drivers and 33 operators. During the consultation, we received 6 responses, 4 from operators, 1 from a driver opposing the increase, and 1 driver in favour of the increase. No comments were received from members of the public. In accordance with Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act, 1976. Where objections were received, they must be considered by the licensing committee. A further newsletter was sent out to drivers and operators to inform them that in light of the objections, a meeting of the licensing committee was being arranged. And in response to this communication, licensing received comments from one driver and one operator in support of the increase and one driver in opposition. All comments can be seen as Appendix 3, pages 13 to 18 of your agenda. In addition to fares, the taxi tariff sets out the maximum amount a driver can charge for a passenger for soilage. At the February meeting of the General Licensing Committee, it was agreed that the maximum soilage charge should be increased to £100. Of those who responded to the consultation, no one opposed the increase and 4 were in favour. Members are now asked to consider the comments from the taxi trade and decide whether to make any modifications to the existing taxi tariff. Should members decide modifications are necessary, members are asked to determine what those modifications should be and whether, in light of the relevant objections, the agreement to automatically annually increase the tariff based on national rail fares should be modified. If members do not agree with the proposed increase, suggestions for alternative options can be found at section 4 of this report on page 5. To assist members in their decision, information on current fares for national and local authorities is provided as for national and local Kent authorities is provided as Appendix 4 on pages 19 to 20 of your agenda. The table in Appendix 4 shows the current national position for Swale, which is 49th, and our position following the proposed increase, which would be 29th highest in a list of 341 local authorities. In comparison with Kent authorities, we are currently joint 5th highest with Dartford. The proposed increase to the tariff would place Swale as 2nd highest after Sevenoaks. However, it should be noted that 7 of the 13 Kent authorities have not increased their fares since 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I open up the debate for members to ask questions. Oh, Councillor Palmer.
Reading the comments from taxi drivers and the operators, it says the maximum. So that means they could charge less. They don't have to charge the maximum. So where they're worried about competition, they could use their discretion and have a lower rate. That's the way I read it, and I think that's the way it's phrased quite clearly. And I can quite agree that when someone has 10 pints of Guinness and a couple of meat pies, clearing up after them isn't the best thing to do. So I quite agree with that rate increasing. But maybe we should make it more clear, and I would hope that they would know, that they don't have to go to the maximum rate. They can just pick and choose their own rate to what they feel is right in their competition, sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, that is correct. They can charge less than the maximum amount, and some companies do already do that.
And maybe we could, as a council, reinforce that so they do actually know that they don't have to charge the maximum if commercially they think it's advantageous for them not to.
Thank you. Councillor Nunday.
Thank you, Chair. So I definitely agree with increasing the soiling charge, because the cost of getting cars cleaned has obviously risen with the cost of living, and that could put someone out of work for the rest of the night if someone, as Councillor Palmer says, someone chucks up in the back of their taxi. In terms of increasing the overall rates, though, I think it's really difficult, because on the one hand, customers don't want to feel that they're being ripped off, and I think that might damage their business as well if people just don't use the taxis because they think they are simply too expensive. But on the other side of it, the drivers need to be making enough money to have a good standard of living. And I think Councillor Palmer does raise a valid point that no one's forcing the taxi companies to take that increase. No one's forcing the companies to do that. So if one of the taxi companies decides that's too much money, they're well within their remit to just lower it. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that, Joey?
Obviously, as we've said, they don't have to do that. The one thing they do have to do, though, is they do have to have their meter changed, whether or not they are charging the maximum of fare. Every time the tariff goes up, they will need to change their meter.
Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. The way I'm listening to this debate is that the maximum will be £8.70 will be the most that any taxi driver could charge. Am I reading this correct?
Yes, that would be for a 2 mile journey.
For a 2 mile journey.
I think the way the meters work, it could be slightly different depending on whether they are in slow traffic or waiting for a while, because the meter then does.
Right. So further clarification.
Because it's time and distance.
So what are we saying? That they could charge more?
They can only charge what the meter would calculate, but the meter may vary slightly if they were sort of in very slow moving traffic, or if they were stationary for any period of time, because, like I say, the 10p increments don't just drop down by time. By distance. They also drop down by time.
Okay. I mean, I think the £8.70 maximum, in my view, is with the cost of fuel going up, and obviously the cost of living is also increasing, perhaps at a reduced rate, but it's still going up. These guys have got to live. I think possibly £8.70 under the criteria as a maximum. That's a bad rate in my view, but I'll listen to the rest of the debate before I vote, obviously.
Thank you. I disagree. I think we're going against what the operators and the drivers have said. They've said they don't want the increase. They've said, that it's a struggling trade as it is, which it is for anyone who's. I mean, like I say, I'm not involved in the business now, but 10 years ago, I was, and it is one of the hardest trades when you've got, because you're constantly fighting over work. And I think if we're not listening to the consultations, then you're not going to get the responses, because they're just going to think, well, it's like even one of the comments says there's not going to be enough people to object it. You're not going to object it, so why do I bother? So if they've already got that feeling, surely we should be supporting the trade and not. I agree with the increase in the soil charge, and I think a lot of them do. But if a lot of our drivers that work that have licensed in Swale and operators are saying don't do the increase, I think who are we to say, yeah, we're still going to increase it? And also to say we're second under Sevenoaks when you've got Medway and Maidstone, that is quite a high. I know some of them haven't increased, but they haven't increased obviously because the business isn't there to increase, because people won't pay it. That's my thoughts on it.
Just to get it clear in my head, so if we approve this tonight and someone wants to have a lower charge, they still have to recalibrate their meter. And what's the cost to an operator for recalibrating a meter? Is that a known cost, or?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. They have to have their meter calibrated, no matter whether they're going to use it or not. Everybody's meter has to have the same tariff on it. Off the top of my head, I think it was about £25. I think it's about £25, but I can check that for you, Councillor, and come back on that.
That's fine. It's not an excessive amount.
No.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Reading through this report, I am concerned, as Councillor Moore is, that we should support what the taxi operators and drivers are actually saying. I mean, I understand that if a taxi operator doesn't want to put up their fares, they don't have to. But if you've got a big fleet of cars and you've got to pay 25 quid or whatever it is to recalibrate your meters, that can run into hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So looking at this, I would wholeheartedly support the spoilage increase. But I think we should support what the trade is saying and actually not increase the fares. My take on it is on page 5 under the alternative options, that the current taxi tariff is fair and reasonable and leave the fares as they are and only increase the spoilage charge. And I seem to recall reading in there that we've got it within our remit to actually extend the period of between fare increases from 1 year to 2 years. And reading through what the traders put in there, I would put as a proposal that we follow option A on 4.1 and also increase the timescale for increases from 1 to 2 years. I hope someone might second that proposal. Yeah, I propose that we go with the alternative option A under 4.1 on page 5, and that we also move the fare increases from annually to biannually. Thank you, Chair.
You second that? Yeah. Right. Okay. All those in favour of the proposal, please put your hands up. Oh, you haven't got a...
Sorry, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, it's on page 5 if you haven't got it. It says that the current taxi tariff is fair and reasonable and to leave the fares as they are and only increase the spoilage charge. And I also obviously propose that we move the increases from annually to biannually.
Right. Can I have a vote for all those in favour of the proposal? What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? All those abstained? 2. 6, 4. 2 abstentions. So that means we can't do the recommendations, can we? Because this has been put forward. You know, does this involve what we will?
Whether to modify.
And we've done.
Decided not to modify.
Yeah, so we've done that's okay. And whether to
modify only the soilage.
silage and then
Whether to amend the agreement to
which that's what they're
let
doing
them agree to amend that
Amend
to
that.
biannually.
biannually. So, could you write on that for me and then I can put it out to them? Phew, thought it was going to be easy tonight. I knew it wouldn't be. But I was a bit worried about the increase because, you know, but there's going to be some individuals that are going to not like it. Right, everyone. Obviously, we've adjusted the two recommendations. I will read them out now. Right. Recommendation 1. Members agreed to stay with the current tariff and only modify the spoilage fee. Right, that's the new for number 1. You happy with that? For number 2, members voted to amend the agreement to automatically increase the tariff taxed on, that's rail fares, isn't it?
Based on rail.
Based on rail fares biannually. Are you all happy with those two recommendations? Okay. Well, shall we have a... Could I have a proposer for that? Thank you, Councillor Parr. Seconder. And now, all those in favour, please raise your... Yeah. And abstentions? 2. That is carried 6-2. And I think that's it, members. Thank you for coming, and I'll close the meeting.